And hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday night's Narrative Live. It's the after show. Rachel's reading a book. How are you, Rachel Bader-Coffer?
Ooh, sorry. Let me just pull myself away from the history of the Third Reich.
Oh, that's just what I was reading, actually. I'm so glad you have that. Well, what do you think of the ending?
I don't understand the relevance to anything that's going on.
Cliff Schechter is here from the Unprecedented podcast. How are you, Cliff?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Zev.
It's great to have you here. It's exciting. And also Jack Bryan, the director of, I forget now, sorry. My brain has just lost itself. Active measures. I've got it now. My brain will restart in a few minutes. He's here as well. How are you, Jack?
Doing great. Am I still in a lag?
You're not, actually. You fixed the lag, which is great news. So everyone's here. Rachel, we haven't heard how you are. You're always great to have on the show. You've got good dogs and other things. How are you?
I'm good, and I am madly jealous of Jack's eyebrows. So,
of his eyebrows? He does. He's got the
absolutely incredible eyebrows, So let's just get a minute to acknowledge that.
We were doing I was doing the poster for the show, and I couldn't believe it. Your really dashing Hollywood pictures, Jack. I mean, I'm jealous of those. They're very, very stylish.
No, yeah. They sent a photographer. It's going to turn out well.
It turned out really well. Those would be really good for
There's some quality chest hair in there too. I mean, we have to acknowledge that.
Oh yeah, I know that we studied these things, but it was just interesting to note that that's also what happened. So we got a lot to talk about today. There's plenty of news. I should mention to people who are regulars, fans of the show, that Lincoln's Bible will be back next week with Greg Olear. They both have separate commitments tonight, but they will be back for the season finale this next week. But now that we're here, we've got all these great people here. We're going to do an after show all about I was going to call this show Democracy 911 or something like that, or Emergency in America or something, because I feel like that's the tone where everyone is at. I feel like everyone's sort of thinking that all the wheels are coming off and there's no way we're going to save the country. But instead, I just got this breaking news, and I thought we should start with that. There's a leak from inside the GOP. Apparently, they've got a new strategy that they're trying out. We found it on Mark Meadows' lapel. Apparently, this is it. PowerPoint did it. Seriously, it's right over here. There it was in his lapel. He's quite sure that it was PowerPoint's to blame, and they're going to blame it all on Microsoft. But of course, that's not what's going on. Cliff, this is your story. Why don't you tell us a lot about what the GOP is doing, or thinking they're doing, as they're heading into.
By the way, I was totally sure it was fucking Google, so the Google Docs must have been down that night for PowerPoint.
I was worried it was going to be keynotes. I'm a big fan of keynotes, so I was, but they can do whatever they want to with PowerPoint.
So I mean, look, the story here is, I mean, it's almost hard to know what to say. It's just adding to the body of evidence that we already have, that this criminal traitor that was in the White House was doing all he could to have a violent or nonviolent or both coup and retain power once he lost an election. And, it is a big deal. Obviously, the key here is that, so Mark Meadows was turning over materials to the January 6th committee. And among them, it's amazing what you can find when you look through the stuff they give you. They found a PowerPoint. Because who doesn't put a PowerPoint together for a violent coup to overthrow a 200+ year old democracy?
I think they actually found did they find the actual PowerPoint, or did they talk about the PowerPoint? Did they actually have all 38 pages?
I'm not sure if they have. There definitely were some slides in there.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them.
I don't know if all. Yeah, I don't know that all of them are in there, but they're talking about the different things they can do. They're like, well, Mike Pence can just not can say that these couple states, well, we can't be sure what happened. There seems like there was voter fraud, and then it gets kicked to Congress, which has always been one of their things, which is, because for people who don't understand, if our electoral college, if there weren't to be enough votes so that anybody were declared the winner and it went to Congress, not every Congress member doesn't vote for themselves. They vote as part of their caucus. And Republicans, so the Pennsylvania caucus gets one vote, right? Yeah. The Ohio caucus, Ohio gets one vote. Well, they've gerrymandered it so much so that Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, all these swing states, the Republicans control the caucuses, even though they don't often win there. So to make a long story short, here we have in writing their plan for a coup. And the bigger part, I think, for people that, have seen these things happen in other countries and think, oh, it couldn't happen here, is to declare a national emergency. I don't know if anybody ever saw 7 Days in May, but you may want to brush up now. And call in the military, federalize the National Guard, and actually call them in. And we're talking about military on American ground. And so, again, I'll say quickly, it shouldn't even be that we're so shocked. We know he had the conversation he had with Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State. We've heard the audio of Georgia. Just find me 7,000 votes, right? We know that some of the other plans that that he installed his people at the Pentagon, and that they refused to call in the guard initially when there was this attack. They held up. I mean, there's so much evidence out there.
Yeah, I mean, we know this. We know it to be true now. I mean, this guys, they were planning a coup. They executed what was almost a coup. They just didn't quite finish the job, and now they got caught. So we are dealing with the consequences. Or maybe they don't care that they got caught. But, this document, let's just go through it quickly here. Brief senators and congressmen on foreign interference. Declare national security emergency is number 2. Number 3, foreign influence and control of electronic voting systems. I should back up here. Declaring the national security emergency is not something that I'd heard before. I heard them say that they were going to declare emergencies in some states, but to declare a national security emergency, I don't think that's ever happened.
My guess is that would be the pretext to having, to ignoring posse comitatus and getting the military on our soil. But
they thought they could do that with just some states. I didn't realize they were going to do that in. I thought it was going to be martial law in some states, but not in a national security emergency. But maybe I'm not understanding the terms there. Then they're saying foreign influence and control of electronic voting systems. Then declare electronic voting in all states invalid, which was interesting. All states, not just the ones that they thought they were originally finding voter fraud, which is fascinating. And then legal and genuine paper ballots counted on constitutional remedy delegated to Congress. Again, that's really interesting. So this is not previously been seen except from today, I believe, or maybe it was yesterday from Hugo Powell at the Guardian newspaper. But it is very stunning. I mean, we're talking about the actual steps into a coup. I mean, there's nothing else here but a coup. It looks like a coup. It walks like a coup.
I mean, look,
must be a coup.
Yeah. I mean, the key is, we keep seeing more. We saw the Eastman memo, which talked about some of this. I mean, again, it's sort of like every step they take forward, where they get more of these documents or more people come in and testify, we find out a little bit more. But I think enough of the dots have been filled in that this was happening. And so I think the thing that I want to obviously let everybody else and shut up for a second is what I need to do. But I think the thing that just drives us nuts, again, and I lost it today on Twitter, and I think a lot of people were retweeting this thing that went kind of viral just because they have that same feeling, which is, what the fuck is our media doing? And what is honestly the purpose of the mainstream media if you can literally cover the top page of the New York Times with stupid email stories in 2016? But this stuff, Raffensperger call, the Eastman memo, what happened today, that stuff, just a day or two, they don't give it top line coverage. I mean, this is a coup, for Christ's sake.
It is interesting. I mean, there's just that. This is a great thread, by the way. Everyone should check out your Twitter feed because it is, I would call this super viral. How many, 37,000 likes or something? It's pretty well liked.
It's getting to that point. And again, it's getting to that point just because, again, it's not that I'm some genius. It's that I think I channeled it was pure anger by me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're all angry about this because it really
plan it out. I just, whatever came to my head, and it ended up being 4 tweets because I'm looking at these people that are journalists that theoretically are supposed to be defenders of our democracy and watching them write fucking stories on Kamala Harris buying French pots and oh my God, she doesn't use Bluetooth. Let's call in the National Guard for that. I mean, it's just it's like up is down, and this is insane. So
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's at this point, they're not just ignoring a story; they're willfully ignoring a story, or they're underplaying it somehow. I mean, it's not, it can't be that they don't see it as a story. It's right there in front of our eyes. Who wants to jump in here? Rachel, Jack, you've got both sides.
I do. I'm foaming at the mouth.
Foam away. Tell us what's going on.
Cliff, I was pretty balls deep all day in designing a strategic plan, which is my deep-seated belief is our only hope at thwarting the midterm effect and giving us any chance at holding Congress and the Senate. So I was only able to throw a little bit of bandwidth to this on Twitter today, but I too was focused on, hey, we now know, it's not that we didn't know, I always knew that there was more than the spontaneous armed insurrection at the Capitol. That was the capstone event in a long series of coup that was actually pre-election planning, right? And it ties all the way back to the RNC chair and a Bill Barr. We all knew that, but now what we can say unequivocally is that it was a strategic plan, that the coup at the Capitol was actually an event probably meant to enliven or empower that paper plan. And, these players involved many people in the Republican Party, in and without the Trump administration, potentially into the Defense Department. And we're going to start to see this evidence because thank God Liz Cheney is on that damn committee.
Right.
And, we couldn't ask for a better tiger, right?
I'm so thankful every day for her because she really does.
Oh,
give you some
Oh my
strength.
God.
I wouldn't be sitting
All
on
these
any of this
people
shit
know.
without Liz Cheney, dude,
Right.
right?
They know that if they don't listen to Liz Cheney, her dad will shoot them in the face. We have that on our side.
This is the secret plan to make Democrats really violent, I think, is
Hey, you know what?
this
If you
whole
think
idea.
Liz Cheney is an evil, diabolical Republican, I got news for you. She is our evil, diabolical Republican right now, right? And if
I'll
she
take
ran
it.
our electioneering, we wouldn't be losing right now, right? So,
It's true. But what have you talked about making a strategic plan today? What do you mean by that? You're actually making it, what does that look like in your world?
Oh yeah, no, I literally am cooking in the kitchen. I am whopping up some biscuits for us all in the kitchen right now. And what I am doing is I'm going to put out a public facing document that says this is the reality of the midterm effect. It is a fundamental that you cannot deny. You can't.
What is the midterm effect? Wait, I want to slow you down. What is the midterm effect? What are we talking about there?
So the fundamentals that drive midterm elections disfavor the party that holds the White House. Okay. And this was really not hard for Democrats to embrace in 2018 when I first came out and became a public figure, because I was telling Democrats, hey, this thing called the midterm effect virtually guarantees you're going to win control of the House, and these other analysts are undercutting it. Actually, it's going to be 40 seats, because I was telling them what they wanted to hear, and it was good news, right? So I'm only mentioning that because I want anyone listening to this who wants to pretend that the midterm effect isn't a thing. It's a thing, and now it's against us, right? And we also have this other structural disadvantage in the gerrymander, because we are good people who want good government, and so we use our blue state control to make it impossible to partisan gerrymander and put it in the hands of nonpartisan commissions, which was a good idea, except for the Republican Party is going to use control of their states to gerrymander the living fuck out of every place, and they might be able to gerrymander themselves a House majority, right? So those are two structural disadvantages we're facing.
And you think we can defeat those? We can actually beat that? I mean, those are pretty big things.
Listen.
Yeah.
Don't interrupt, Zev. Let me go.
It's my job to clarify.
I know. You've got to hear the third structural disadvantage that we face, because it's just as important. The third is that we run an electioneering system. It's like this. It's like New York versus development out west, right? Our election system is put together, by necessity, built in flight. Versus building a city out west, they had the benefits of development, knowing about cars and whatever, and designing shit to be smarter. We need to do that with our electoral system from the top to the bottom, right?
Right.
And it's more than, people are very conscious that we have a messaging problem, and that is true. And the strategic plans can spend a lot of people on that. But that's not the only problem that we have, okay? Because even if we fix messaging, we have a message delivery problem, we have a strategy problem, we have a tactical deployment problem. So I'm putting out a guide as to what I think will give us the best odds against a very strong fundamental against us. I'm going to point to some recent performance by the GOP against strong fundamentals that suggest strategy matters, modernized electoral methodologies make a difference, and I'm going to beg that we build a shield in these competitive races in the House and the Senate and try our very best to hold on to democracy, because it's really our last shot.
Rachel, that sounds great. We only have 10 months. I mean, is there really a chance for us to do all of that reworking that we need to do within 10 months?
Yeah, not within the system, because the system is so bifurcated and decentralized. So what I'm doing in the strategic plan is I'm making a case. Look, we have a house. We have in the democratic world of electioneering, we have this house, but really it's got 3 legs, okay? And the 4th leg of it is missing entirely. And for now, the best we can do in a triage situation is come and finish that 4th leg, right? And ultimately, the whole house is architecturally not optimal, by building this fourth leg, this shield project for these competitive races, this strategic plan is not, it's not the long-term ideal, but at least gets that transition going. But the goal will be triage, put this shield in place, and you have this suboptimal other system operating to elect Democrats. We're going to handicap it, right? Next to what's going on. But the goal long term is to replace that suboptimal system, because if 85% of our effort of money that gets spent is spent in ways that are not optimal, then we're never going to be able to take advantage of our numbers advantages in the population effectively, right? So that's really it's a short term oh shit doom plan. Right. It's the only plan I think that gives us any chance. I mean, we just lost Virginia.
Yeah. If we don't win this election, I mean, everyone's thinking is that democracy is dead, that there really is nothing afterwards. I mean, once we don't win the next elections, the midterms, we're screwed. There's no way to save democracy. Is that? Do you guys all concur with that? Is that your? That's not what I think. I don't think there's very much to do afterwards. I mean, we're sort of done.
I do believe that.
I think we also. Well, I think a lot of us find ourselves. I mean, I can speak for myself on this one, which is on one hand, we want to support all the investigations. We don't want to be like demanding things and saying things that are going to be harmful to those investigations. We want to trust those systems are happening on a good level. On the other hand, it's like I can, from my point of view, like when we were doing the Q show for Vice, we hired a crew in December to go to the January 6th insurrection because we knew it was going to happen.
Right.
Because it was obvious. And so if we knew that was going to happen, the FBI either they didn't know, which is worse almost, or they did and they didn't do anything. And so I think that a lot of people, myself included, are kind of caught in this middle space of like, well, we want to trust that this is going forward. We don't want to be, interfering with that in a negative way. But also, we've just been played. We all trusted that the FBI, that the National Guard, that all these people would actually have our backs on that day. And they didn't.
I agree.
Yeah.
And in fact, for 5 years, we've been played.
The day, like 2 days before that, I did a podcast with Jonathan Metzel, who you should have on this show. And I don't know if he's watching, but he has a great book. Everyone should read it. It's called Dying of Whiteness. And it will explain why trying to deal with married economic populism and curing racism is going to be tough. Okay. Yeah. So you should definitely read that book. But anyway, him and I, we had a show and we were sitting there looking at the 6th. It was like the 3rd and worried, like we were terrified. We knew this was coming. How could they have not even had security at the Capitol? I mean, yes. Right. So that's really what the strategic plan and strike pack is about.
But we also know that we also know we may not win the next elections. Sorry. We also know we may not win the next elections, and we know that democracy dies after that. I mean, we're sort of all staring at this thing. It's a very awkward, horrible, train crash happening in front of our eyes, and we're watching it happen in almost real time. And there is nothing, it seems, that we can do about it legislatively or even in whatever campaign strategic planning you might come up with. It doesn't seem to me that there's many paths out. I mean, because once you've got all these state legislatures now empowered to validate the votes, which is what they have, or many of them are getting, it kind of becomes mute to the rest of the election process, because they'll just decide whatever they want to decide. And we've clearly got a Supreme Court that's very much in the will do whatever they need to do for Trump and company. So, I feel like we're in a real emergency, as opposed to we can follow the path and the processes and the usual things that we might normally do. That doesn't feel to me like it's going to work anymore.
Well, I think we have to consider the possibility that, and this is a scary possibility, but that the rot is actually even deeper than we think. I mean, I follow this incredibly closely. I didn't even know Charles Flynn had been promoted after the election. The fact that Charles Flynn, Mike Flynn's brother, was in the room deciding if the National Guard was going to respond to January 6th is insane. Yeah. Think about how many people had to have known that he was in that room, why he was in that room, and his connection to Mike Flynn, and everybody was just cool with it.
Yep, and they lied about it. They lied about it to cover it up. And then
Yeah.
they sent
They
him
knew-
off to his
yeah,
new
yeah.
to his new assignment
That's right.
and pretended nothing was going on. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
look,
That's
this rot is
that's
deep.
great, Zev, because they fucking knew. They knew it was so cagey that they knew enough to lie about it. So it's like the excuse that they could have in the military culture. I get that it is apolitical and it is really indoctrinated. I'm from a military family, okay, so it's not bullshit. It is a thing. It is a real thing in the civil service too, okay. And it would be a valid reason to say, well, we just didn't even think about it, dude.
Yeah.
But then they lie about it on the tail end, so you fucking know they could have thought about it. And you're damn right. There's tales. We now know. We know it. There's tales that go from Trump to the orders to not come and give that backup. There's not preventative active measures taken to come down there for sure because Trump or somebody was preventing the FBI from being aggressive in that, or they were terrified to do so because of Trump. So it's it doesn't necessarily have to be an explicit order, but there are so
there were
much
explicit orders.
Well,
There's explicit orders to the National Guard to stand down that day.
And also,
Yeah,
here's
that-
the, you know what the tell
that
the
is-
tell on all of this, because you brought up Liz Cheney before. We're talking about Dick Cheney. At the time when they wrote, all the living secretaries of defense signed that op-ed and said, right, and this was what, a week or two before that happened, and wrote this op-ed in I think it was in the Washington Post, or it was in the New York Times, it was one or the other, where they said, reminded the military of their duty, that we have the peaceful transfer of power in this country. And you had to ask yourself, they're so embedded, even if they're not Trumpists, the Cheney family and Dick Rums, and Rumsfeld at the time, I think, was still with us and signed it. And, like they're in those conversations. They're at those parties. They have those contacts.
Right.
They especially into the Defense Department, two former secretaries of defense. Clearly, they were hearing these things. They didn't just write that thing for the hell of it. They were hearing that people were trying to tell, various military police forces to either aid and abet this thing or to stand down and allow it to happen. So that's the key to me, is that op-ed doesn't just come from nowhere.
You're 100%
And I think
right.
Liz Cheney wants us to know that too, by the way. I don't think Liz Cheney
I do too.
doesn't want us to know that. I think her whole fucking purpose in life right now is to get to the point, Cliff, on the day that we get to find that out. That is honest to God what I think.
There's news tonight about these new memos by another Trump lawyer. This was related to Pence. And this is, again, more detailed memos. In two memos, she writes one to, let me put this in full screen so you guys can read it properly.
Yeah.
There's this is what's her name again? This is 1 second.
Oh God, Jenna Ellis.
Jenna Ellis, the mystery lawyer. So she's writing here to Donald Trump in this one email, which talks about this attorney-client privileged communication for some reason, and it says in his formal request, the vice president should require a response from each state legislature no later than 7 p.m. Eastern time on January the 15th, 2021. So their whole plan was that they were going to delay. He wasn't going to complete counting the votes. He was going to dispute some of the counting, send it back to the state legislatures, and then have them come back for the January the 15th. So create some sort of crisis, some sort of delay. We'd not seen this before. And then she does the second email, which goes into greater detail here of how they're going to do it. I mean, it's obviously on very shaky constitutional grounds, but she does, I think, is really telling. Therefore, the vice president should begin alphabetically in order of the states, and coming first to Arizona, not open the purported certification. This is really significant, that because you remember during the middle of this whole insurrection, Paul Gosar, of all people, the congressman from Arizona, was insisting that he does his count thing. And everyone was wondering, this chaos going on. Why is it so important that Paul Gosar does his thing? It was important that he had to start the count in order, I suspect, because they wanted Pence to then halt it. And that's why it was such a critical thing that he actually got back, I think, during the mayhem. Like, there's chaos going around. He's like, I've got to start the count. And that always just stood out to me and to our investigators a narrative as to, what was he really up to? And I think this helps, helps fill in some of the blanks there. But it's a very telling document. Again, it's detailed. step by step how to do a coup. This is less about a coup, more about stopping the vote, but it's certainly connected with all the
No,
other
you know what?
things. It's a coup.
No, that's a coup.
Right, that's cool. But
Well, they'll argue
They
differently.
know.
I know it's a
Come
coup.
on.
I know it's a coup. But
Yeah.
They
But it's
know
also-
that no fraud has occurred. Okay, so like they not just suspect it at this point, they know it beyond a shadow of a doubt because they have tried in every perverted way to find some, and they have fucking failed, right? And so we are now talking about the most verified, validated, safeguarded election in the history of this country, and that's what they want to do. So that is a coup part.
Yeah, I mean, there's no
Sorry.
doubt about it. And Pence may be the person who actually goes down saving the republic if it indeed does get saved, because he didn't actually follow the rules here, and he did. So who would imagine he would be the hero to save America? I should tell everyone that, by the way, we're late on the YouTube channel, and I hope it's working now. I apologize for that. And also, if anyone wants to comment, it's narrative.org/TV, narrative.org/TV for our interactive player, where you can comment and do all sorts of, send us all dirty messages or whatever messages you want to do. That's the place to do it, at narrative.org/TV. Don't send us dirty messages.
So
I think we had our. Yeah, you wanted to say something, didn't you?
Yeah. So I think that an important point, and we do talk about this as a slow-moving coup, but I think it's important to look back at any revolution or coup in the past. Like when the Bastille was stormed, they weren't like, "Oh, we're living in the French Revolution. This is all going to go this way." It was just another riot and another thing. Oh, this important building was taken out. There were only 5 prisoners there anyway. Who cares? So the path of revolution and coups is really worn on these incidents where they pass by and people think, "Oh, that was it." Absolutely, Third Reich.
Yeah.
So we have awareness of this thing. I mean, we know it's happening. It's even worse knowing it's happening in some ways, because what are we doing to stop it is the question. And
can I add something?
Yeah, Cliff, go ahead.
Well, so you showed that memo, and I hadn't seen it before, by Jenna Ellis, and it reminded me of something. And even more, these are such evil fuckers, and they use the levers of power that they control. And what popped in my head as I saw that, as they're trying to run out the time to January 15th, nobody may remember, but Bush v. Gore, that was the justification that bullshit Supreme Court used, their partisan justification for shutting down the counting, is they said, "Oh, well, we just don't have any time anymore. The time's going to run out." Of course there was time. But that was what they did. That was the final way they shut everything down, was by saying, we don't have time. So if you think about that, they're going by that Supreme Court's playbook. Thomas is still on that court. Kennedy is still on that court. You know what I mean? In other words, do I know that they coordinated this with those guys? I don't, but I know that they know that those guys had found a justification to shut down a count in 2000. So now they're going to try to do the same thing, and they could count the Supreme Court to do the same thing.
The people in the chat are also mentioning here, and a story that just broke before we got to air here, but it is an interesting story about Kanye West as well. The threat, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, all these stories, but they're actually true. Was apparently threatening a Georgia vote official, saying you'll have no freedom for 48 hours. This is following the Ratzenberger call, sorry. So that is interesting, and I'll follow up on that story. I'll see if I can pull up the Reuters piece. But, it does seem like there's this actual mob, not the storming mob, but an actual organized criminal element, including people like Kanye West, that was doing a lot of really shady stuff and maybe threatening officials on a state level quite widely. We've had reports of that from a few people on the show. So we might not just be seeing a slow rolling coup, but we also might be seeing an actual attack on the country. An actual.
Oh, Zev, you don't know the story yet? Wait till you read the story, dude. Oh my God. I'm so sorry to interrupt
one?
you, but this is a fucking Titanic, dude. All right. I thought it was just like some wacky shit when it came across my Twitter, but then I figured out, okay, no, this is some crazy shit. You got to watch the video, but there's this woman that was identified in a video in Georgia moving a suitcase off of a shelf. Okay.
Right.
She was just a rando who needed a job. And then she ended up being targeted by the GOP, and they were trying to prove that she was this fraud person. And I knew about her being harassed, but today I find out that Kanye West sent somebody from his staff down there to pretend that he had sent like a person to protect her like that she was under threat, and he was, sending his own personal body, like, security team to help her, but she had to confess to, like, whatever had happened, and, like, coordinated probably with the Trump campaign to intimidate her into admitting that she had done this thing that, like, Giuliani had all caked up, dude.
Oh
And
my God.
keep in mind, though, and I'm just gonna tee this up, you can work it in after your initial response, but I know you're going to like this shit, because here's the thing we're freaking out about, Cliff, too, and Brian, like, no one gives a fuck, right, about, we have a coup, and, like, we're talking about inflation and turkey prices, right? The Kardashians are going to tie in, right? So here we have this Kanye conspiracy with Don Jr. and Trump, and Kim is divorcing Kanye, and because the civil suit for this thing is going to be, it's going to be huge, dude. So, like, we might actually get regular people to care if we can tie the Kardashians.
Well, the headline today was about the Kardashians, was that Kanye used her name in a concert. That was the big headline that I saw about them. So I don't think people are caring. Hey, Jack, I know you've got to run in a few minutes because you're only got a short time with us, but I wanted to give you at least a few more minutes to talk about what your whole point today was, how no one's paying attention, like all of us, really. That was our point. Keep going on that theme, if you will.
And I think that's a question that we all have to sort of tell ourselves in the mirror. That is like, right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to do a lot of sort of podcast mini series that I've been working on that will tell sort of stories that have sort of thriller genre, true crime genre, but are about politics, that are about what's going on right now. And I think that we, as I'm assuming just by everyone listening to this is a progressive, that there are not enough people that agree with us on cultural issues to win a majority. There are not enough people that have the same values as us completely to win a majority. And so we have to start talking to people in a way that's just about, we don't have to give up the social issues. We need those. But we also need to start talking more about economic issues in a way that it's going to respond to somebody in West Virginia is going to hear it and, actually realize that it involves them as well. That the politics is not just about identity. It's also, or about sort of this outside identity. It's also about your family. It's about you being able to make money. It's about you being able to drink clean water. And that there are, and include these in narratives. You know what I mean? Like, we like to give information of like, oh, hey, like, this would be better because of this, as opposed to framing it in the story. And the right is really good at doing that, of telling people a story that is going to fulfill cultural ideas and their already existing suspicions, and then populating that story with their fears.
They create narratives. They create narratives in our real world, whether it's like Rittenhouse or whatever. They're created events. I mean, they're manufactured events, but they sell a story and they sell it in the right tone that they're intending to get it out there. The left does not do this. The left has not figured out that this is what they have to do.
Part of it is about intentionally saying, okay, here is this kind of. And listen, a large part of it is that Democrats have to appeal to a wide swath of people. African Americans in Chicago don't necessarily vote the same way as Silicon Valley guys in San Francisco. What appeals to them, messaging that appeals to them, is different. Whereas Republicans really just have to target one angry white dude in the middle of America, and that message you can apply to a lot of different places. But I think that the messaging, midterms being sort of ground zero for all of this stuff, we need to get our messaging in check more. We have things that appeal to the right. I think one of the things that, just doing some surveys and looking at the right a lot, is especially the sort of crazy right wing, they're on economic issues, they're not crazy right wingers. It's all cultural stuff that's being sold at them. And so you can actually get a fair amount of motion if you're just focused on how policy fits into narrative. And on the right, they're happy to do that. On the left, we're terrified of it.
Yeah, we don't tell those stories well at all. I mean, we just look at what's going on in Texas and the backslide of all our rights, no matter, we saw today the incredibly weird ruling by the Supreme Court. That's not a good ruling for anyone on the left. I mean, people were celebrating it. I was like, they're basically giving you a tiny slice of law where you can go and to fight this thing. It's not really, doesn't look like it's protecting rights. And of course, we're going to see gay rights go down the same route, and every other right that we've really earned in the last 50 years is going to go down with, in the same way as abortion. Those are the kinds of things that can really motivate people if you can tell them in a good narrative, if you can show them how it's affecting people in their real lives today. That can really impact people. So, Jack, I know you got to run. So I don't want to.
Thank you very much. I'll be back soon. Sorry, I have to jump off.
Thanks for being with us.
Yep.
Appreciate it. You're fantastic.
Thanks. Good to meet you, Jack.
Okay, I got to do a couple of fast switches here. So let me do that. Okay, and we are, well, why don't you pick up on that, Cliff or Rachel, whatever you guys want to say.
Well, I'd like to say, because I'm interested to see if Rachel agrees with me on this as the polling maestro, but I agree with almost everything Jack said there. On my podcast a lot and other places where I write for the Daily Beast and, whatever, I talk a lot about our failures of messaging, the fact that we don't talk to people. I mean, human beings have communicated over generations before TV, believe it or not, with stories. We told each other stories, and there's a story. Every good story has a good guy, a bad guy. It should touch people emotionally. The right gets this. Why we can't do it when when we've got trial lawyers and Hollywood on our side, who are two of the best groups of storytellers that exist, I don't know. I've never been able to understand it, why that is. But to get to the key point, and I'll see if Rachel agrees with me. The only thing I disagree with that Jack was saying there is I don't actually, if you frame it the right way, on most cultural issues, the majority actually agrees with us. It's that we don't do that. We, they want to go against the vaccine mandate. They make it about freedom. They make it about, this and that. Do we do that with abortion rights? Do we do that with gay rights? Do we do that? We just are so bad at telling these stories and messaging our issues. Anytime you look at anything in polling, them, 60% plus believe in Roe, 90% plus want background checks on all guns. I can go on and on through that kind of stuff. And the last thing I'll say is the other thing they're really good at is they find that one sliver that usually is not even true, right? Partial birth abortion, or like that one thing that will scare people. Where are we saying, to every Republican running for the House or Senate or anything, where are we saying you want to force women to have their rapist's baby? Because that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
That is
part
of it. That is right. That is the right. That is the extreme.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could just say, hey, you know what? We'll go into Ohio and, we're going to tell them a narrative story about how much better, now their lives are better and their kids' education's better and they've got Build Back Better and there's childcare shit, and that shit has to get done. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm saying, hey, don't ever do any of that stuff or fund any of that stuff, but it would be nice to think we could win that way when the other side is going to be yelling they're socialists that want to defund the police.
Right.
And, actually, it's much worse. I mean, DeSantis is running in a swing state. He's a sitting governor of a major swing state. And his fundraising pitch right now is centered on sending Fauci to jail. Dr. Fauci. I mean, come on, guys. But
that's what's working for them. It's exactly what's working for them.
That's what I mean. But they do that with lies. Right. They do it with lies. And what makes me so angry is we won't even do it with the truth. Again, we're not lying. They want to force women to have
them to death with fucking flowers right now, guys. Okay, the fucking country's on fire, and I hate.
I'm just right. They want to force women. As I say, they want to force women to have their rapist babies.
And it is about narratives and personalizing shit. And the Republican Party. They are fucking beast at making mountains out of molehills, right? So CRT, Democrats don't think we can make voters care about crumbling democracy and a coup by the whole Republican Party when the Virginia electorate was made to think about their kids' curriculum. Their kids' curriculum, dude. And they did it because they don't focus on this macro shit with newspapers flashing and graphics, graphs and stats and shit. They sat one nice middle-aged white lady down, and she looked real angsty about, her kid reading black porn in high school. Yeah. And even showed her hands angsty, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, she was a good actress.
So yes, the Vidicop for Strike Pack ad that I've never, we can't finance. These are ads that scare the living fucking shit out of women, dude. This is oh my God, I'm going to die of cancer because I can't get an abortion. These are ads that are oh my God, I'm going to be forced to bear my rapist baby, and then they're going to sue me for custody of it.
I know, but why don't we have that? Where is that
story? Right? People
That's what I mean.
Not just that you bring, okay, this is what 22 with Republicans back in control of your shit looks like. and leave it at that. It looks like for you.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I want you to run through
Hear
this.
my voice, if you can hear my voice, and you think that in our special circumstance right now, which is, we're all going to be living in some totalitarian nightmare in 18 months, that this sounds like a more feasible approach than, this long, not unimportant, not uninvestable work that should continue. I'm just saying, we are not doing any of this work right now. There is zero money going to this work, and we really need to finance it,
I'd like to hear your the analysis on this thing you gave us here, which is, basically this is a Virginia election analysis, and it tells you that McAuliffe lost by a significant amount to. Why don't you tell me? You're the expert at this. Why don't you tell me what I'm looking at here?
Oh man, you're looking at pain for me, dude. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because a year ago, I started meeting with people, and it was a crazy idea. When nobody with a community college single mom, and I built a super PAC because I'm like, okay, the only way we can win elections is if we change the system. The system sucks. It's not just the messaging. It's not just in this. All that shit is all limbs. The whole tree, the root, the soil must be yanked. And it must be designed around understanding how modern voters behave in polarization, how the opponent behaves, and their machine works, because it is a fully well-heeled machine that eats us electorally, right? And understanding that turnout surge and decline is going to be predictable based on in-party, out-party dynamics, negative partisanship, and that excitement factor that comes with being out-of-party power. And if you know that, and you're looking at a state like Virginia, a year out, I was able to say, look, Virginia is not likely blue. It's a lean blue state that fell out of competition because you had this huge turnout factor with Trump in office. And now that's gone. And now we're going to see what we're going to see when they start polling Virginia, I said, is 10, 15 point enthusiasm gaps in the data. And lo and behold, when they started polling, what do you see, right? And what that meant, I said, a year out, was that what we're going to see is declines in the margins on turnout of the lower committed people within that Democratic coalition. And some of those people will be Democrats in the voter file. Some of them are going to be left-leaning independents, and all of them spell trouble. We can find them specifically in the voter file, though, because we can identify who they are through their whole history of the voter file. They're most likely going to be people who entered after 2016, keeping in control for age. And then through that, we can target them through demographic factors, right? So let's design a strategy that, instead of looking at Northern Virginia as the political center because college education rates are so good up there, let's build not from the strongest point out, but from the weakest link up. Okay. And we have to do that because otherwise you run the risk of shedding so much statewide vote through these different House and district races that you lose statewide. I was less worried about that, and I'll be frank about that. But I was more worried that that statewide fall off would disperse in a way that they would lose the House of Delegate trifecta that they had. Okay. And so, of course, election night, oh, look at this, Youngkin converted all these suburbanites. And, I'm sitting there like I'm just waiting because I'm not a very talented analyst, but I knew that some really good analysts had gotten on the hunt of this conversion persuasion analytic map. And here we have two of the best political scientists in the whole discipline. And they took a look at that Virginia vote, and it shows unequivocally exactly what I said was going to happen happened. Exactly the way that I said.
Explain this to us, because we're not. I'm not a statistician, and I don't know what I'm looking at here. I've got a blue.
Okay, all right. So, look, regardless of Politico's headline about my work, right? My theory does not say anything about there not being any swing voters. There are swing voters. We call them persuasion voters. You can call them conversion voters. There are base mobilization voters, turnout voters, right? And you have to get to, you have to win conversion voters. You have to get as many partisan voters to the polls. But the way the electorate behaves, America, is most people are partisan voters, even independents, right? And they lean Republican, they lean Democrat, they predictably vote a certain way. And when you understand that about the electorate, then it becomes really focused on, okay, how do I convert as many of these independents as possible? But I really need to make sure I don't get, the electorate's 40% Republican, 30% Democrat, or I'm going to lose, right? So you're really focused on that as well. What this is looking at is the statewide distribution, right? And you have the total number of votes for Biden and Trump, right, in 2020 on that y-axis.
Right.
And it's looking at how heavy were each of these precincts for Biden or Trump, right? And it's going to compare that with Youngkin and McAuliffe's vote shares to see, okay, this district that went really super hot for Trump, did it go super hot for Youngkin or less super hot? And then same story for Biden.
So Biden basically lost a lot here, is what you're saying. Looking at this very, it was a massive amount.
I think the technical term is a shitload.
Yeah, shitload.
Yeah, what we want to know is, all right, what this is showing is that Biden lost a shit ton of votes in areas where it's safe blue, right? And if they had just gotten those Biden voters to come out and vote for McAuliffe in those places, they would have been fine. And then my guess is when the analytics for the voter file don't come out for a while for Virginia, but when we get down in that data, my guess is we're going to find out that the predictors for these fall off are pretty obvious. They're going to be those leaning independents because they tend to be more ideological, not less than your average Democrat, and younger, but also it's going to be college education. And that's why I wanted to build a strategy that really hammers in.
This doesn't augur well for next fall. And I mean, Cliff, you're a political strategist too. What's the messaging issue here that we need to do? It seems pretty desperate. I mean, I hate to sound like that because I don't like to be like that, but it does sound pretty desperate.
Well, that's
it is.
Real quick, Cliff, though. It's because it's not it's not just message.
Yeah.
What this is saying, that, and I just want to do this, Cliff, and then you can riff all you want.
Yeah, sure.
This is showing it's not just the message, okay? Because you can dicker around about this or that, and they definitely shouldn't have been taking the bait to talk about CRT. We can talk about that on a different show. This is saying our strategy sucks.
Yeah.
The entire fucking system, okay?
Yeah. We don't even have a vision that people can buy into, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I'm reading.
No, I mean, the strategy, we need work on all sorts of things. But when it comes to just the messaging part of it, again, not only do we not sort of go on offense, but by not going on offense, then we allow them to get out of what it is they fucked up later. When we're not pinning them to the wall on their shitty economic numbers, later they're able to attack us for inflation and they're not looked at as hypocrites, right?
Right.
When we don't, I mean, so let me give the more recent example. What I've been running around saying is, anybody remember, it was before I was born, to be honest with you, but or I think I was a year old, Richard Nixon, his famous, saying about the Democrats, acid, amnesty, and abortion. Easy to remember, alliterative. And I've just been going around saying COVID, corruption, and coup. This is what you should be saying the Republican Party is. And constantly, everything should relate to that. Because again, all these parents that were upset, and CRT played into that, but they were pissed because their kids weren't in school. The reason why Youngkin was not held to account for what the Republican Party did is we've never held the Republican Party to account for the fact that hundreds of thousands of people died because of them. Yeah. Right. And
COVID, corruption, and coup, actually, or did you say coup at the end there?
I said coup, but coup
I like
works
coup as
too.
well.
I like coup also. I've gone with both of them. Coup kind of fits under Q because I look at Q as kind of all the crazy shit they do. But it's like, I mean, it should be something that's easy for people to remember and should be the narrative, and everything they do fits under there. So every time some asshole like Dr. Oz comes out and you find out that he said 3% of kids dying is acceptable to reopen schools, you're like, see, they're the party of COVID. They want to kill your kids. Yeah. And don't use euphemisms and don't play nice and don't, say it the way the Republicans would say it. They want your kids to, for them, they're cool with 3%, hundreds of thousands of kids dying. Okay with that, and this is what, and if we'd driven that point home, then Youngkin would have had to be on defense as opposed to being on offense when it came to issues around COVID in schools. And so we don't, not only do we not get to sort of pin them to the wall, but we also in the long term allow them to wiggle out of and actually
That's
turn
right.
things that they've completely screwed up into positives, you know? And so that's what's so frustrating to me. So you asked me for 22, you know, I would start right away on the three things I'm talking about here. There's so much corruption, obviously, around Trump. I mean, we just found out Trump again gets up on a stage with COVID, doesn't tell anybody. Every time they open their mouths on anything to do with Fauci, you allow this many people to die. You want this many kids to die from this. You quote them, you go after them on it. Every new stupid statement that Marjorie Taylor Greene ties into that on COVID. Same thing with corruption, which is endemic in the Republican Party. It's somebody new every week. And then, you know, decide, go with coup or Q, but whatever it is, you want to overthrow democracy. You think JFK Jr. is coming back and is going to be your president because you're fucking nuts, you know? And that should be tied to all of them.
Exactly.
You know?
They should be belittled for it too. And this idea that we should not make them tie them as grossly. I mean, nobody knows these things about them, guys. If you go to the grocery store and ask average people about the Republican, hey, what's your impression of Republicans? Aren't they like low taxes?
Yeah.
That's all they fucking know, dude. Okay.
Yep.
So like, you know, I'm sorry that people have these like pocket theories about, oh, if I bring Obama in, it's somehow going to make more Republicans vote. Or I don't need signs for my campaign, even though I'm running against an incumbent and nobody knows who the fuck I am.
We're not even running. We're not even running in all the. You know, the Democrats. I haven't even got candidates in a lot of these districts, right? I mean, we don't have candidates in every.
That's a whole nother problem. Yes.
By the way, just before we leave the numbers thing, I think this is an important thing that's going to come around this next few days. If it's not there already, is that we're going to be at this number of dead people, Americans who have died from COVID. And it's going to be really interesting who wears that number, because I guarantee you the Republicans are going to find a way to make it a Biden issue, when in fact it really is not a Biden issue. And
it's not a guarantee. Ronna McDaniel, GOP chair, puts that shit out every day. She'll put out simultaneously on her thread, she'll put out shit that blames Biden for perpetuating and not curing the pandemic, and then the next tweet will be against the vaccine mandate.
Oh no, they feel like that's
they've all done that. They've blamed Biden and said, "Oh, he said he was going to solve this and he failed and whatever." And again, if along the way, every time one of them did what DeSantis does and Abbott does and all these idiots do, if every crazy state legislator who says some stupid thing about Jesus Jesus didn't wear a mask, so I shouldn't wear a mask too. Again, how you frame it, you don't attack religion. You just point out that well, I don't think Jesus would want our children to die. I mean, we don't do that. We don't remind people of these things they say every day. One of their guys, another one of them, just who was a conservative, anti-masker. I think he was on the board of elections, who wanted to reject the votes in one of the counties in Michigan. He just died of COVID.
I saw that today.
We don't, as Rachel's saying, nobody knows you go to a grocery store, because we don't drive that message every day about them.
So these guys are not going to do it. I mean, we talk about but we're not them. Actually, we're not sitting in the department, the Democratic Party headquarters, determining this, and yet it is our future and it is our country, and we're not doing anything about it. So
no, here's the thing, though. I'm pretty sure there's like nobody doing that.
So how do we, the people, actually get to do this kind of stuff? Because ultimately it is a democracy and we can impact these things. We have means. We have smart people like you guys. How do we organize in a way that gets a different message up there? Or is that just dreaming in Technicolor?
An external infrastructure that's basically a private sector version of electioneering, and we do it our fucking selves, right? I mean, isn't that the point? Brian's like. Your other guest was Brian. I'm so terrible at names, right?
Jack Bryan. He's got two first names. I mean,
he's
so cool.
Now I don't even feel bad, dude.
You don't have to feel bad on that one. I've said it a million times.
Brian, Jack, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
No, let's take points out, man. I mean, I think there's a few people in the world, myself included, maybe Cliff, and you would fall into this category, who are like, hey, I can see this shit in plain sight. And I want reaction and action and a counter offense launched, and I want it now, right?
Yeah.
And given the complete, you have to keep in mind, Jamie's a reformer, man. I mean, I don't know that you could put anybody different in the DNC and hope for anything better. I mean, I think he's doing pretty good in there. He runs a bureaucracy. It's an organization and institution. It's not an electioneering strategy shop, okay? There's no electioneering strategy shop per se in the Democratic Party.
Well, there's
the
a problem.
Infrastructure, when I said that the two parties have a separate system, I mean it. From the very top to the very bottom, it's going to get all explained in this doc that's coming out. Why our system and our design is our biggest obstacle. It's our only hope is to bypass it for the temp aid and try to build a shield. And I literally call it the strike back shield strategy in these competitive races. Set the tone, right? Someone's got to do the big ball swinging, brand busting, narrative setting shit, because otherwise the narrative's going to be whatever's the headline. And the headline's going to be inflation or Ukraine or whatever and it's done.
Whatever the right wants to push. Yeah. It'll be Benghazi again, maybe just because they miss it. They'll bring it back.
So here's what I'm saying is we know the stakes. The stakes are democracy or not, right? And it is true that, like, Zev, this future that you paint, this devastating, dystopian future, that is our future, but we actually are not in it yet. We will not be in it until the day after the November 22nd, 22 elections. Right. And until that moment, I refuse to yield, okay? So I'm doing a moonshot. We've built, my two teammates and I, Lori Spivak and my teammates Ashley and Lori, we've built this framework. We have a war machine built. It is ready to go. It is going to explain exactly what we can do that's tangible and quick, given our constraints. It operates with the system that we have in place as part of the strategic understanding. It operates with how the opposition operates as part of its strategic understanding. It has never been tried before, okay? It's totally different. It is not something that has ever been tried before. That is why I'm convinced we must try it, because we know for sure if we do not try something different, we are screwed. So
I mean, the one thing we do have on our side is that we have so many people that are motivated. I mean, it does feel to me like a majority of people are more motivated to keep democracy and are anti-autocracy for many obvious reasons. But they're there. There's lots of people out there willing to put up the fight, even now, 5 years later, after we had to endure it. So it's about getting those people motivated.
If I can say anything positive about it, the one thing, and obviously Rachel's working on this. I'm putting together a large. It'll probably be a super PAC like organization. I've got a large email list, and I've got sort of thing. Is that we can, those of us out there these days, we can raise, large amounts of money through email, through other ways online in small donations for people who care, right? There are some donors who get it that are out there. That it's not that the inside game hasn't, it works for us here and there. There's a lot of problems with it. And if enough of us are out there, and pushing this and saying at the same time, yeah, we got to hold them accountable for COVID. Yeah, we have to hold them accountable for the coup and go at them. There is hope. I'm not sitting here saying, oh my God, yay, hallelujah, we're going to be fine. Trust me. No, I'm quite concerned, very worried that we're headed in a very bad direction to a very bad place. But I'm just saying, at least there's a way to do this. And enough people, I know, because I talk to political people, as Rachel does, a lot of people are motivated to go out there and push a harder message and be smarter strategically. So I'm hoping.
Pull that together.
I've got a TV network I'll throw in there.
Loaded and ready to fire some fucking guns, dude.
Yeah, I think so.
There we go.
Well, that's a good place to end it, because it's about the only positive way we can do that, right? Is just think that there is a plan and that we'll get there. Thank you guys for being here tonight. I want to let you guys have the opportunity to tell everyone where they can find you. Cliff Schechter, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your Twitter handle and everything else we need to know about your empire.
Yeah, the empire striking back, you mean?
Yeah.
You can find me at Cliff Schechter on Twitter. Probably of all social media, most of which I hate, is where I'm the most active, because Twitter is Twitter. So just at Cliff Schechter. I've got a podcast I do with John Aravosis, and we talk a lot about these issues. There he is, Unprecedented Podcast. So it's just Patreon, /Unprecedented Podcast.
Yeah. Probably.
And my firm, Blue Amp Strategies. We did some ads for Biden last time around. We've done them for numerous groups, and also public relations. I like to think we're pretty good at that. So There you go. You can find me any of those spots.
Okay, that's Cliff Schechter. That's Schechter, as I found out the hard way when I misspelled it the first time.
We dropped the second H off on the boat over here.
Yeah, thank you. I should have sent me a memo. I didn't get it, but there.
It's all good.
It looks fine in my final version of the poster. And Rachel Bidikofer, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you and your pack?
Yeah, and my name, which is just Bidikofer, which is so much easier than Cliff's name.
I've learned how to spell that one.
I don't know. And actually, on this panel, I feel, actually almost pretty like Smith-like,
That's true.
No, please find me. I mean, I would really like you to find me on strikepack.com, our Act Blue page especially. I'd like you to come and watch some of the 8 ads that we've created that show how to take it to the metal against the GOP. And on Twitter at RachelBidikofer.com or at Rachel Bidikofer, and then the Twitter account at StrikePack. Yep. Okay,
so at Rachel Bidikofer, it's spelled BITECOFER, and then StrikePack is Strike STRIKE pack. All right, there, spelling done for the day. You can find Narrative at narrative.org, and you can also support our Patreon at patreon.com/narrative. And that's the after show for this week. Thank you guys for being here. It's really exciting to have new voices on the show, which is so awesome, and you guys are terrific. So hopefully I'll have you back on the show.
I would never choose to watch the collapse of democracy with anybody else.
Oh, well, that's fantastic.
I feel good about it. You're saying that too. No, seriously, Zev, this is a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. We'll have you on again, and maybe we'll try Save Democracy while we're at it. So good night, everybody. Thank you for being here, and have a great weekend. Narrative is made possible by viewers like you. Join today and support truly independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. That's patreon.com/narrative.